Today's episode is brought to you by Modern Grower. Modern Grower is the go-to source for 100% organic, GMO-free microgreen seeds. Trusted by hundreds of growers for high quality and low prices. If you're growing microgreens, start saving at shop.moderngrower.co.
For somebody looking to start this at home and they don't have a kiln, they don't want to fabricate one because they're not sure if they want to get into it, do you think they can get good results out of just digging that cone out of the ground and doing the burn in that cone?
Yes, they can. Yeah, they can. And there are some excellent YouTube videos. Josiah Hunt has done them in Hawaii, shows that, but they're all again, search YouTube. And yes, one can. And there's certain different ways that one can quench it of just pouring water on it. But start off with a small. It doesn't have to be a 6-foot diameter. Start off something that's maybe 24 inches deep and 24 inches in diameter, 24 inches deep in a cone shape, and play with it. And if nothing else, you can just cover it up with the dirt that you pulled out and leave the biochar there, because you can quench it with soil. And there are the minerals that the biochar pulls from the soil. There's an activation process that all happens. So oftentimes when they're using doing these large burns in ground, they won't use water to quench it. They will actually mound dirt over it. And then when they excavate the biochar, you've got some soil, some minerals already mixed in. So you've started the process of charging your biochar.
The quench is the quench is an important part of the process. So let's say you get to the end, your cone is full. You're seeing that white thin ash layer form on the top. It looks like everything has burned. I want to now put it out. If you're using water, how do you go about that? And what else is the water doing besides just extinguishing the fire?
There are a couple of things the water's doing. First of all, there are two ways of doing it. Does one want to pour the water into their kiln, or does one want to dump the biochar out, depending on the size of the kiln, depending on where you're doing it, on a layer that's not going to burn maybe a piece of metal or something, or even on the ground, but you will burn any grasses or stuff you might have there, and then quench it on the ground. The reason I say doing that is because if you do it in your kiln, it will shorten the life of your kiln because of the oxidation of the heat, the hot metals getting hit with steam and water. And what it starts the charging process, it opens up the pores. It starts to create the film around on the outer layer of biochar, because biochar does there's this film which captures where the nutrients and where it's mined. It's not in the biochar, but it's actually encased around a film on the biochar. And so using a water quenching does do that. And I will sometimes water quench. Oftentimes, when I'm out doing demonstrations in small top-lit updraft stoves, I just have a larger container, like an old popcorn can, that I will dump the biochar and put the lid on. There's no air, and I end up with dry charcoal then, dry biochar. And then it does need to be put water on it at some time, because biochar is hydrophobic when you begin with it, and it will actually float. It needs to sit with water for a while because it will absorb quite a bit of water. And when one quenches your biochar with water, you've started the process of getting some moisture into the biochar.
Let's say now you've quenched. The biochar is now sitting in the kiln. What's your preferred method or next step at that point? Do you go to reduce particle size at that point, or are you looking to charge it at that point?
Depending on what you've used, it's using some larger flame cap kilns. If you've got chunks that are 3 inches in diameter, I'd want to break those up a little. But if you're using smaller material, you can go right to charging it. A simple way, depending on how much you've created, when I've done at workshops with people that have used large repurposed fuel oil barrels that were 5.5 feet in diameter, standing 5.5 feet tall, instead of buying a large flame cap kiln. I know several farmers that are doing that, using material like that. And you'll end up with large pieces of material. And one of the simplest ways of breaking up that material is when you dump it on the ground, run it over with a tractor, run it over with your pickup. And it'll break up those pieces and then charge it. I've seen people that have put this material inside like two tarps, and then put one tarp on the ground, one tarp on top, run over with the tractor, pull that tarp off. You've broken it down a little bit. And then on that tarp, they've actually charged it on the tarp, where they've added moisture, maybe added, in this case where we were on an island, and they took 5-10 gallons of seawater, the minerals from the seawater, put that on the char, some beneficial microbes and whatever they add in their mix, worm castings, and then just covered it up, let it sit for about 4 or 5 days, and then put it into their garden.
If you enjoy this podcast, then be sure to check out Farm Small, Farm Smart Daily, where you can get your daily dose of farm wisdom. Tune in every day to learn the latest tips, tricks, and stories from the world of farming. Whether you're a seasoned farmer or just getting started, our podcast has something for everyone. Join us as we explore topics like farm business, crop planning, soil management, and tools and technology. Start your day off right with Farm Small, Farm Smart Daily, available on all major podcast platforms. Don't miss out. Subscribe today.